Okay, so picture this, my mom calls me up about the family New Year's trip. Right. And she just casually drops that my kids aren't invited. Yeah, not a hint of a mistake. Just, nope. They can't come. I know, it stung. But here's the twist. What she doesn't know is that the place she booked, I actually own it. I mean, I renovated it, I control it, I pay for it. And honestly, that's where things get interesting. You're gonna want to hear this one. I woke up feeling like the world was spinning. I mean, not in a dramatic, metaphorical way, literally spinning. My fever had been relentless since early Tuesday morning. I was tangled in damp sheets, staring at the ceiling fan as it blurred into a gray, spinning vortex. My body felt like it had been drained of every ounce of energy. The doctor's words echoed in my head, severe exhaustion compounded by a viral infection. Basically, my body had just forced me to stop. I could barely lift my head, let alone think clearly. And then, my phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a photo of my mom, Brenda. Normally, a call from her meant lists, demands, or some long-winded monologue about her garden club drama. But in my feverish, vulnerable state, I half hoped it was different. Maybe she had heard from my ex-husband that I was completely down for the count. Maybe she was calling to offer to pick up Kevin and Maya from school so I could rest. I swiped to answer and put it on speaker, letting it rest on the pillow next to me. "Hey, Mom," I croaked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not feeling great today. Actually, I think I caught that bug going around." There was a pause on the other end, and not the kind that meant she was worried. No, it was that impatient, dismissive silence, the kind that made you feel like your words were floating out into space. "Oh, drink some tea, Rosie. You'll be fine." Brenda's voice was sharp, clear, and completely devoid of sympathy. I blinked, trying to focus through the fog in my brain. New Year's was coming up 3 days away, and usually that meant a potluck at her house. Loud, chaotic, messy. The kids running everywhere, food that was more lukewarm than gourmet. Not glamorous, but tradition. I tried to respond, groggy and confused. "Right. What time do you want us there? I should be better by then. I can still make the spinach dip." "Nope." She cut me off with a little nervous laugh that did nothing to soften the blow. "That's what I'm calling about. We aren't doing the house thing this year. It's just become too much work for me. You know, cleaning up after everyone, the noise, it's exhausting." I tried to keep up, confusion cutting through the haze in my head. "So, are we going out, or did you want to do it at my place?" I asked, hoping for a clue, a hint of normal. She continued without missing a beat, zipper noises in the background. She was actively packing while delivering this news. "Patrick, Laura, and I booked a little getaway, a private cabin retreat up north, just for a few days to recharge." I froze. Patrick, my younger brother. Laura, his wife, and Mom. My chest tightened, hot and sharp, as a wave of hurt washed over me. "Oh," I managed, voice barely audible. "Is there room for us? I can book a separate room nearby if the cabin is full. The kids would love to see snow." "Rosie, stop," she said, tone shifting to that familiar, condescending lecture she'd used on me since I was a teenager. "It's a very curated space, high-end, lots of glass, expensive art. It's really not suitable for children. Patrick has had such a hard year with his job. He needs quiet, absolute quiet. There isn't enough room for your little ones not in the house, and certainly not in the vibe we're going for. I felt my head pound harder as I tried to process it. You're going on a family vacation without me, without your grandchildren, because Patrick needs quiet. It's not without family, she corrected, defensive now. It's just a different configuration. Patrick deserves something peaceful this year. You know how high-strung he gets. Laura just doesn't think she can handle the chaos right now. Laura thinks, I whispered to myself. Sinking deeper into the pillow, she was actively orchestrating this. Brenda rushed on, eager to end the conversation. We'll be back on the 2nd. We can exchange gifts then. Get some rest. Rosie, you sound terrible. Click. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, the disconnect tone buzzing in the silent room. Alone. Sick. And my own mother had just told me that my children, her grandchildren, were essentially being written out of the family celebration so her golden son could have peace. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and stinging. But beneath the sorrow, something else began to coil in my gut, a cold, hard stone of realization. The betrayal cut deeper than the fever itself. I drifted in and out of a feverish doze for the next hour. The conversation, replaying in my mind like a broken record. Not enough room for your little ones. Patrick deserves peace. The words burned. Around noon, I forced myself upright. I needed water. I needed to check on Kevin and Maya, downstairs with a nanny I'd rushed to hire when my fever spiked. My hand froze midair when my phone pinged again. A forwarded message from Brenda booking confirmation, PDF subject, the Summit Luxury Alpine Retreat, attached itinerary. I stared at it, waiting for the hallucination to pass. Maybe I was still feverish. Maybe my brain was playing tricks. I opened the PDF. There it was, the logo, a stylized mountain peak in silver and slate gray. The address, 4400 Whispering Pines Drive. A dry, rasping laugh escaped me. The summit, my own property. They had no idea. How could they? I had bought it 18 months ago under my LLC, Rosewood Holdings, and spent the last year renovating it from a dilapidated A-frame into a luxury rental. Italian marble counters, curated art, floor-to-ceiling windows, everything hand-picked. My mom had been so worried my children would break it. And here I was, sick in bed, realizing they thought they could just waltz in and claim it. I dialed Brenda back, needing confirmation, needing to hear her say it again. "Did you get the file?" she asked, breathless. "I did," I said, voice steadier now. "Mom, this place, the summit, looks very expensive." "Oh, it is," she whispered conspiratorially. "Laura found it on a third-party site. It's normally booked months in advance, but we snagged a cancellation. It cost a fortune. But Patrick is paying half, and I'm covering the rest. We really want to spoil him." I gripped the sheet, pulse racing. "And you're sure? Absolutely sure? I can't come. I can leave the kids with their dad. I don't want to be alone on New Year's." A lie, of course. But I needed to hear her say it. "Rosie, please," she groaned. "Don't be dramatic. It's 3 days. And honestly, Laura feels that if you come, the dynamic shifts. She just wants sophistication. Can't you just be happy for your brother?" I whispered, steadying my voice through the fever and anger. "Mom, I work hard too. This isn't a competition." She snapped, hung up, and left me staring at the phone. alone, sick, and realizing the depth of the exclusion. They wanted sophistication. They wanted a curated retreat without my children, financed by my mom's retirement and Patrick's cards. And they had no idea that I owned the place all along. The betrayal stung like fire, cutting through the haze of illness, leaving me feverish, furious, and calculating. This was the moment where hurt started to transform into something else. Something that would drive the next move. Something that would flip the story entirely. I couldn't believe it at first. My mom had sent the booking confirmation for the Summit Luxury Alpine Retreat, and my brain just kept repeating the same thought. They had no idea. I stared at the PDF, thumb trembling slightly over the screen. The logo, the address, 4,400 Whispering Pines Drive. It all looked familiar, too familiar. And then it hit me like a punch to the gut. I owned the place. I literally owned it. I had bought it under my LLC, Rosewood Holdings, over a year ago. Poured my savings into a complete renovation and listed it as a luxury rental. Italian marble counters, floor-to-ceiling windows, custom stone fireplaces, hand-selected art. It was my labor of love, my pride, my quiet empire built while they thought I was just scraping by. And now, here was my mom, booking it for Patrick, Laura, and herself, thinking I had no stake, no control, no say in it. The audacity made my fevered head spin even more. I leaned back against the pillows, trying to breathe through the confusion. My body still ached, the fever making everything heavier. But my mind was starting to sharpen. This wasn't just about them wanting a quiet new year. I realized, oh no, this was orchestrated. Laura had been at it again. That polished, Instagram-perfect sister-in-law had been quietly setting the stage, crafting the narrative that my kids, my little chaos machines, weren't welcome because they didn't fit the curated vibe. And Mom, bless her, had gone along parrot-like, without thinking for a second about the hurt she was inflicting. It wasn't just exclusion. It was a performance, a play they were casting without me, pretending we didn't exist in their vision of luxury and peace. I pictured it in my head, them arriving at the cabin, expecting a pristine, private getaway, thinking they had snatched up a rare cancellation. Laura probably had a glass of champagne in hand. Perfect posture, perfect smile, all for the camera. And my mom nodding along, oblivious to the fact that the stage was mine. The realization made my chest tighten, not from fever, but from pure, searing indignation. I had built this. I had painstakingly transformed it from a dilapidated A-frame into $1 million retreat. Every beam, every fixture, every choice had my fingerprints all over it. And they thought they could just waltz in and exclude my children from their fancy little weekend. I sat up straighter, my body still weak, but adrenaline starting to surge. I thought about the smart locks I had installed, the ones I could control from my phone. Every entry point, every code, every detail, my domain. Suddenly, a twisted sort of satisfaction bubbled up through the fever haze. They were walking right into my house, my rules, my control, and they didn't even know it. The power shift was intoxicating. For months, I'd watched quietly while Laura subtly rewrote the family dynamics. I'd seen the whispers, the judgments at Thanksgiving, the tiny digs about my parenting. And now, the moment of reckoning had arrived. They thought they were clever. They thought they had orchestrated peace, but they had no idea the silent hand behind the door, the owner of the stage, was me. I replayed the sequence in my head, fever and frustration intertwining. How long had Laura been setting this up? Since she entered the family. Really? From the beginning, it had been subtle, almost invisible. Her comments, always directed through Mom, questioning my kids, insinuating their chaos, painting herself as a serene, polished foil. Mom, desperate to stay in Laura's good graces, had swallowed it whole. And now, this trip, this curated, sophisticated retreat, supposedly for Patrick to recharge, free of the disruptive influence of his nieces and nephew. And they had used Mom's retirement funds, Patrick's credit card, probably bragging about the deal as if they were savvy planners. Meanwhile, I had the master key, the final say, the entire property under my control. I could feel my determination growing, each pulse of my fevered blood fueling it. No longer just hurt or disbelief, no longer just anger. A plan was forming, tentative at first, then sharp and clear. This wasn't going to be some quiet, passive realization. No, this was the pivot point. They had treated us like we were beneath them, like we didn't belong. And now, they were about to find out just how wrong they were. I thought about the kids downstairs. Kevin and Maya, completely unaware of the family drama that was unfolding. They were safe, they were loved, and they would get to experience the mountains, the snow, the cabin, the warmth that Laura and Mom thought they could exclude them from. And I realized that, fever or not, I couldn't let this slide. They had underestimated me. They had thought that Rosie, the struggling single mom, the sister always in the shadows of Patrick and the carefully curated lives around her, would just take it. But this was my turn, my property, my rules. My children weren't just welcome, they were central. And that, I thought, a small, fierce smile spreading across my lips, was going to be made very, very clear. Even lying there, half weak, half furious, I began calculating how fast could I move? How quickly could I get there? Who needed to be alerted? Every detail of the cabin was under my thumb. The booking confirmation, the itinerary, the codes, they were all mine. And suddenly, the sick haze, the fever, all of it, faded just enough to let clarity take over. They had booked the retreat, thinking they were in control, and now, unknowingly, they had booked themselves into my house, my private, luxury retreat, and that realization, sweet and bitter all at once, lit a fire that made me sit up straighter, more alert than I had been all day. Fever or not, the game had changed. I wasn't just a bystander anymore. I owned the summit. They were about to find out, and I intended to make sure they never forgot it. By the time I forced myself out of bed, the fever had finally started to loosen its grip, though my body still ached. But there was no more lying around. Not now. Not with what I had just realized. I took a deep breath and grabbed my phone, adrenaline kicking in. The first call was to Sarah, my assistant. I had to make sure every piece of the puzzle was in place before we made our move. "Hey, Rosie, you sound awful," she said immediately. But I didn't have time for pleasantries. "No, Sarah, we're not canceling anything. Open the file for the summit. Block off the dates, December 30th to January 2nd, owner occupied, internal maintenance. Everything else stays the same. But the door codes need changing today. I'm going up early. Make sure the property manager is ready." I could almost hear her brain working through it on the other end. Confused, worried, but trusting. Perfect. That was exactly what I needed. Then came the quick check on the kids, making sure Kevin and Maya were ready. Snow gear packed, and Nanny briefed on emergency contact details. This was going to be part adventure, part heist, and I wanted them prepared. They were bouncing with excitement, little unaware accomplices in the plan, and I couldn't help but grin despite the residual ache from my fever. Breakfast was quick and functional toast. Fruit, coffee strong enough to wake even the most exhausted human. I double-checked the thermos with black coffee for the road. My own little fuel for the coming adrenaline rush. Every detail counted. I had to be sharp. This wasn't just a family vacation anymore. This was about reclaiming control, teaching a lesson, and doing it with style. We loaded up the truck. I drove a Ford F-150, a heavy-duty sight vehicle. Not some sleek sedan that would tip off anyone that I actually owned the place. Perfect cover, if you ask me. Kevin and Maya were in the back, pressing their noses against the cold glass, marveling at the early snow. "Are we there yet?" Leo asked, excitement barely contained. "Almost, buddy," I said, catching his eye in the rearview mirror. "Look at the trees. See how heavy the snow is. That means the sledding hill is going to be perfect." Maya piped up, hesitant but curious. "I thought Grandma said there wasn't room for us." I corrected her gently, with a small smirk. "She made a mistake, kiddo. She didn't realize this is our house. We make the rules here. Surprise." The drive was exhilarating, each mile a mix of anticipation and fever-worn determination. Snow blanketed the roadside, making the mountains look like a postcard come to life. I kept one eye on the road and the other on the rear view, imagining their faces when we arrived, the confusion, the disbelief, adrenaline and cold coffee coursing through me. I could feel my energy surge despite the lingering aches. This was going to be glorious. We pulled up the winding driveway just as the sun began to dip behind the peaks. The cabin loomed ahead, a masterpiece of modern rustic design, cedar and glass, jutted out over the valley floor. I had bought it as a wreck, a foreclosure that had been left to rot for 3 years, and poured my blood, sweat, and savings into every inch. Every beam, every fixture, every pane of glass was a testament to what I had built, while the rest of the world, including my family, underestimated me. I parked smack in the middle of the circular driveway, mud-splattered pickup and all, perfectly obvious, perfectly bold. I wanted them to see it first, to understand the energy shift before they even stepped inside. We unloaded bags, snow crunching under boots, kids giggling with anticipation. I punched in the master override code on the smart lock 1989 hash. The year I was born, and the heavy timber door swung open like the start of a scene in a movie. Leo breathed out a soft, awed whoa, stepping into the foyer. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the sunset perfectly, casting golden light over the open concept living room. "Go pick your rooms," I said, smiling as they ran off, boots clomping against the hardwood I had refinished myself. "Any room you want, even the one with the balcony." While the kids explored, I set up my command center at the kitchen island, laptop open, logging into the property management backend. I needed to see exactly what I was dealing with, double-checking the booking details, the notes, everything. Brenda and Laura had no idea what was about to hit them. Every small click and glance at the screen felt like another piece of the puzzle snapping into place. And there it was, the thrill, the fun, the perfect mix of revenge and clever planning. I leaned back, taking it all in: the snow outside, the kids inside claiming the space, the warmth from the fire, the sense that for the first time in a long while, we were in control. Fever behind me, adrenaline at full. We were about to turn the tables. I could almost hear the gasps, the confusion, the scrambling they had no idea was coming. This was it. The game was on, and I was ready. We pulled up the driveway, snow crunching under the tires, and I could feel my heart hammering in my chest. The cabin sat there like a monument, all cedar and glass, warm light spilling from the windows into the twilight. I could almost hear them in my head, the shock that was about to hit them. I parked the pickup right in the center, mud all over it, deliberate and bold. I wanted them to see the first sign that this wasn't going to go how they planned. From the bottom of the driveway, I saw movement, heads craning, bodies huddled in coats. First Patrick, looking tired and slightly annoyed, like he had no idea what was coming. Then Brenda, scarf wrapped tight, eyes flicking nervously around, probably trying to process why my truck was in the middle of the drive. And finally, Laura, stepping out in pristine snow boots and a faux fur coat, posing in a way that clearly meant, yes, she was ready for Instagram, but absolutely not for reality. I watched them cluster by their SUV, arguing quietly, gestures thrown in the air. "Who is that?" I could hear Laura, her voice shrill and incredulous from a distance. She saw the truck and clearly decided it was a contractor or some kind of random obstacle. Patrick muttered something about calling the management company, looking back at the driveway as if he'd somehow conjure a solution from thin air. Brenda fumbled with her phone, pulling up the email with the code. "It says 5544, she muttered, punching it in like some kind of magic number. Beep, red, beep, red. She tried again. Red. I could feel my grin growing. Oh, this was going to be fun. Laura stepped forward, impatience radiating, tapping and swiping like the world would respond to her urgency. "Let me do it," she snapped, almost aggressively, and typed in the numbers. Beep, red. Again. I could hear the frustration building, the tension thick enough to slice. Patrick was rubbing his hands together, trying to stay warm, trying to figure out why the hell his private retreat had suddenly become a puzzle. Brenda muttered under her breath, flustered. Laura was huffing, trying to maintain composure, but it was slipping. And there I was, inside, calm as could be, leaning against the doorway, sipping tea, mind perfectly clear. My time to strike had come. I stepped forward, fingers lightly on the doorframe. "Hey guys," I said, voice casual, calm, almost cheerful. "You're a little late. We've already started the fire." The words landed like a bomb. Silence, you could feel it. Brenda gasped. Patrick blinked. Laura froze, mouth half open, eyes narrowing. I took another sip, enjoying it, letting them process. What are you doing here?" Brenda finally managed. "I think the better question," Laura interjected, stepping closer, voice sharp, "is how the hell you got in here." "I saw the booking," I said slowly, letting each word land. "Lovely choice. It's my favorite property." Their confusion deepened. Patrick's brows knitted together. "Rosie, did you follow us? Did you rent it out from under us to be petty?" he demanded. I shook my head. Calm, steady. "No, Patrick. I own it." The silence hit like a winter storm. Heavy, suffocating. The kind of silence that makes you realize someone just dropped a bomb in your living room. Brenda's jaw literally dropped. Patrick stepped back, a little wary, as if seeing a ghost. Laura's eyes narrowed, disbelief flashing across her face. I leaned a little more against the frame, letting the words sink. I own the Summit. I bought it 2 years ago, renovated it, listed it. And imagine my surprise when I saw my own mother booking it for a retreat that explicitly excluded my children because they weren't sophisticated enough for my house. Laura let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. You're lying. Rosie, you sell condos in the suburbs. You don't own a $3 million estate. You probably broke in. I'm calling the police. Fingers flying across her phone, ready to dial. I didn't move. Go ahead, I said. Ask them who holds the deed, who pays the property taxes. Rosewood Holdings, LLC. That's me, Rosie Wood. Rosewood, her fingers froze mid-dial. Patrick's face showed a mix of shock and the first hints of realization. I turned to Brenda, who was trembling, eyes filling with tears. You said peace was what you wanted. You said there wasn't enough room for my little ones. Well, peace came early for us because as the owner, I reserve the right to refuse service to anyone, especially tenants who insult the management. Brenda took a hesitant step forward. It's freezing. Let us in. We can talk inside. I shook my head. I don't think so. This is a curated space, very high end, and I just don't think the vibe is right for people who lie to their family. Laura shrieked, her composure unraveling. This is illegal. We have a confirmed reservation. We paid. You can't just deny us entry. I raised an eyebrow, calm, collected. Actually, I can. Clause 14, Section B. Owner reserves the right to cancel or revoke access at any time for emergency maintenance or personal use. I'm invoking personal use. Patrick finally found his voice, anger flaring. We paid $5,000. I let it slide. The refund has been processed. Should hit the account in 5 to 7 business days. Motel 6 down the highway. Pool included. You're welcome. Mom looked torn, pained, caught between defending her son and facing the reality. Rosie, please. It's New Year's. Don't do this. I shook my head. Firm. Okay, I'm sorry you weren't invited, but Patrick needs this. He's been stressed. You paid for this? Yes. But the rules are mine. I walked back to the kitchen island, leaving the door open just enough so they could hear me, but not enough to invite them in. I grabbed my iPad, the hub of the house, the command center, holding it up. You keep saying Patrick paid for this, I said, pointing at the invoice. Here's the proof. Paid in full 21 days ago, one transaction, Visa ending in 4.90, Mom's card, the one I set up for her. Patrick's face shifted through confusion, disbelief, and finally, horror. Laura's lips pressed tight, color draining from her face. Every step, every gesture, every reaction confirmed it. The power had shifted. They were inside, yes, but under my terms. They were frozen, cold, uncertain. The house, the fire, the kids exploring freely, they had walked right into a situation they had no control over. And I had never felt more alive, more in command, more ready to teach the lesson that ownership isn't just about property, it's about respect, honesty, and knowing who really calls the shots. After they finally stepped inside, the tension was thick, almost tangible. I closed the door behind them, And instead of welcoming them, I moved to the kitchen island, laptop in hand, ready to lay everything out. I needed to see the truth for myself, and they needed to see it too. I pulled up the booking file for Brenda Miller. The notes she typed for the property manager made my stomach churn. Laura had left instructions about every tiny detail, from replacing store-brand toiletries with high-end ones, to confirming that the nearest neighbors were at least a mile away. Late checkout, absolute privacy, high-profile guests. And I laughed. Quiet, dry, almost a choked chuckle. High-profile Patrick was a mid-level consultant, and Laura, she was an influencer with less than 10,000 followers, half of which were probably bots she paid for. I scrolled to the billing tab. Brenda had said Patrick was paying half. I wanted to see that. Total cost $5,200, holiday rate, cleaning fee, concierge charges, payment method, Visa ending in 44.90. I froze. That was Mom's card. I knew it because I had set up her Amazon account. No second card, no split payment. Every single penny had come from my mother's retirement funds. And Laura had made the whole thing look like Patrick was chipping in. Like this was their joint investment. I couldn't help it. I let out a low, incredulous laugh. I could almost see the wheels spinning in Patrick's head. The confusion, the shock building. This wasn't just exclusion. This was theft, manipulation, a curated performance built on lies and debt. I opened the background check software I used for commercial tenants. It was expensive, thorough, and perfect for this. I typed in Laura Miller. The report popped up instantly. One small civil judgment, credit utilization 92%, 92%. My eyes widened, dangerously high, almost reckless. I scrolled through employment history. CEO of LM Lifestyle, dissolved 6 months ago for failure to pay franchise taxes. That meant no revenue, no legal business, nothing to back up her image. Patrick's record was cleaner. But a recent inquiry from a debt consolidation firm hinted at financial stress. It was starting to make sense, the frantic energy, the need for appearance, the carefully curated luxury aesthetic. They weren't just avoiding us because my kids were loud. They were avoiding reality. Kevin and Maya were running around, oblivious, laughing as they explored. Leo pressed close to me, eyes wide. Mom, she's lying. Right. I shook my head slightly, keeping my tone calm, though my pulse was racing. Not lying, honey. She's misrepresenting things, but we're safe. Okay, we're home here. I wanted them to feel secure while the adults unraveled. I pointed to the ledger on the screen, explaining calmly, almost conversationally, so it didn't feel like a lecture. Mom, Patrick, look at this. Laura said you paid half. Patrick, but the card here, it's your mother's. Every cent. She made it look like you contributed, and you didn't. And that, Mom, is why she had to exclude the kids. Because she needed a perfect, luxurious backdrop for her image, her brand, using money that wasn't hers to spend. I watched their faces, one by one. Brenda's eyes widened, a flush of guilt, a dawning horror. Patrick froze, staring at the screen, mouth slightly open. Laura, of course, was flailing. She had that practiced composure, but it faltered under the weight of the truth. Patrick stepped forward, confused, trying to comprehend. Wait, she took the money. His voice was quiet, controlled, disbelief wrapped around every syllable. I nodded, calmly but firmly. Yes, she took the money, used it for her trip, and for appearances, not for anyone else. This was never about family or peace. It was about optics and content creation for sponsors, your savings, your mom's funds. It's all tied into the performance she needed. She couldn't risk having the kids there disrupting it. Laura tried to interrupt, her voice pitched and frantic. I had to maintain appearances. You don't understand the brand, the sponsorships. I raised my hand, stopping her mid-rant. No, Laura, I understand perfectly. You use debt, deception, and my mother's money to fund a fake luxury experience, all while excluding my children. And then you lied about Patrick paying his half to cover your tracks. That's what you did. That's why they didn't come. The room was silent for a moment, except for the hum of the heater and the soft crackling of the fire. You could see the weight of realization pressing down on everyone. Brenda looked like she might collapse, Patrick's shoulders slumping, face pale, staring at his wife in disbelief. Laura's hands trembled, her carefully crafted mask of control slipping. I clicked through the banking records, showing Patrick every transaction, every line item. The reactions were almost tangible. His face moved from confusion to shock, then to a kind of hollow devastation. It's all gone, he whispered, voice breaking. Every account overdrafted, every emergency fund emptied. I didn't have to say much more. The look on his face said it all. And the room, the tension, the energy shifted in a way that made Laura visibly shrink. She had no words left, just a few stammered attempts to explain, clawing for excuses that didn't exist. Brenda finally spoke, voice shaking. You stole from my son, and you made me pay for it. I let her feel that weight, nodded, letting it settle. Laura wailed, tears spilling over, trying to justify, trying to spin some narrative. I did it for us. I did it for our life, to keep it afloat. I shook my head, soft but firm. No. You did it for appearances, for strangers online, for content. You weren't thinking about family. You weren't thinking about truth. You were thinking about a brand that no longer exists. And that's why my children weren't welcome, because they didn't fit the illusion. Patrick slumped into the nearest chair, staring at the floor, silence taking over. Brenda hung her head, finally processing that she had been complicit in her own way, that she had let Laura's manipulations override her instincts as a mother and grandmother. Kevin and Maya, thankfully oblivious to the adult chaos, were safe, enjoying the warmth and fire, but the adults couldn't hide from the reality they'd created. The moment was tense, raw, and electric. I stayed calm, voice steady, guiding them through the undeniable facts. The evidence laid bare in digital form, banking records, background reports, invoices. No theatrics, no shouting, just facts. Clear, undeniable, and impossible to refute. Laura flailed in frustration, but every attempt to deflect, to spin, was met with a calm, factual response. Patrick was beginning to see it all for the first time, the web of lies, the deception, the carefully curated facade that had collapsed around them. By the time I closed the laptop, the room had shifted completely. The air was heavy, yes, but it wasn't oppressive. It was the weight of truth finally landing. The lies were exposed, the financial deception, the manipulation, the created illusion of luxury. It was all out in the open. The room felt quieter, the tension palpable, but it was a clarity that had been long overdue. Everyone was processing, and for the first time, I felt a strange satisfaction. Not revenge exactly, but a reclaiming of control, a restoration of reality. They had played a game, and now, under my watch, the truth was undeniable, and the lesson priceless. After the evidence was laid bare and the truth couldn't be denied, Laura froze. Her carefully maintained composure collapsed entirely. She grabbed her coat and, without a word, stomped out into the snow. The tires of her SUV spun briefly on the icy driveway before fading into the distance. Silence fell in the cabin, but it wasn't heavy or tense like before. No, it was different clean, almost like the silence after a storm breaks. The tension had been replaced by clarity, a quiet that felt earned. Patrick sank onto the couch, leather soft under him, head in his hands. Leo and Maya quietly followed, bringing their marshmallows from the fire to sit beside him. Sensing the shift in the room without needing to know the details, I took a deep breath and poured 3 glasses of whiskey, the good kind I saved for closing million-dollar deals. I handed one to Mom, one to Patrick, and kept one for myself. We didn't need words right away. We sipped slowly, letting the warmth of the drink seep through our frozen fingers, through our lingering tension, through the cold that had been in the air when Laura and her illusions dominated the space. For a moment, it was just us, real, unfiltered, present. Patrick finally looked up, eyes wet, voice low. "Every dime," he said. "I've been working 60-hour weeks for 3 years. I thought we were saving for a house. I thought we were building something." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "You can rebuild," I said simply. "You're smart, Patrick. You're resilient. You're not alone anymore." He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in years. "I haven't been a brother," he admitted, voice raw. "Not for a long time." I nodded. "No, you haven't, but it's okay. You see now, and we can move forward. We're here, together. That's what matters." Brenda stood slowly, walking over to the twins who were happily munching marshmallows. She knelt on the rug, knees cracking slightly, and reached for their small hands. The children looked up at her, wary but trusting. "Leo, Maya," she said softly. The twins waited, eyes wide. "I need to tell you something. I made a very big mistake. A terrible mistake." Maya tilted her head innocently. "About the cabin?" she asked. Brenda shook her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. "About everything. I let someone tell me that you weren't welcome. I let someone convince me there wasn't room for you. But that was a lie. There's always room for you. You are the most important people in this family. And I am so sorry that I didn't fight for you." Leo shrugged with the infinite forgiveness of a child. "It's okay, Grandma. We're here now. And Mom has the best house anyway." Brenda laughed, a wet, choking sound, and pulled them into a hug. The next 2 days unfolded in quiet, healing routines. No luxury activities, no 5-star spas, no curated Instagram perfect moments. We played board games, laughing at our own chaotic strategies and silly mistakes. Patrick and Leo built a snow fort outside, the children's laughter echoing through the snowy valley. Mom actually asked questions about my next development project, curious and engaged, finally seeing my work for what it was. We ate hearty meals together, beef and barley stew. Simple, satisfying, warming to the soul rather than to impress anyone. The dynamics had shifted. Laura's absence created space for us to truly be present. to listen, to connect. Evenings were quiet. We sat by the fire, cups of cocoa for the kids, whiskey for the adults. Conversation drifted from silly stories to reflections on the year, what had been lost, and what could still be built. Patrick apologized, quietly, acknowledging the ways he had let Laura's influence cloud his judgment. And Mom reflected on the times she had prioritized appearances over love. The twins brought a kind of innocence that reminded us all what really mattered: connection, honesty, and respect. There was no pressure, no performance, just us, and it felt real. It felt grounding. New Year's Eve arrived, and we gathered on the massive deck overlooking the valley. The world below was a sea of darkness, dotted with distant lights from the town. The cold air was sharp, pine-scented, invigorating. We could see faint sparks of fireworks in the distance, tiny bursts of color against the night sky. Patrick's phone buzzed. He checked it inside, muttering something about a lawyer, but the mood outside was untouched. We weren't worrying about appearances, sponsors, or curated images. We were simply standing there, taking it all in, together. Leo's voice rang out, breaking the quiet. 10 seconds. He counted down with excitement, followed by Maya. We joined in, shouting together, letting the cold air carry our voices. I felt a surge of joy, a real, unfiltered triumph that had nothing to do with money or prestige. I had weathered betrayal, exclusion, and deception, and yet here we were, whole and present. As the clock struck midnight, fireworks painted the sky. I breathed in deeply. The air tasted like pine, like winter, like victory. Peace hadn't come early, it had arrived exactly on time, perfectly timed for us to reclaim it, for once. I held the keys, literally and metaphorically. The warmth of the fire inside, the laughter of my children, the quiet reflections of Mom and Patrick, it all came together to form a sense of closure I hadn't felt in years. We had survived the chaos, exposed the lies, and emerged stronger together. I watched Mom and Patrick share a quiet, mutual understanding, the kind that doesn't need words. The children ran and laughed, completely oblivious to the adult tensions that had existed just days before. For the first time, the cabin felt like a home in the truest sense. A sanctuary built not from curated appearances, but from genuine care, effort, and love. We stayed up late into the night, playing more board games, making up our own rules, sharing stories in quiet moments. No cameras, no performances, just us. The fire burned low, and the snow continued to fall outside, covering the driveway and making the world feel insulated, protected, safe. There were lessons learned, apologies given, and most importantly, a reconnection that had been long overdue. I looked at my children, laughing with unrestrained joy, and I felt a deep, steady pride, not in revenge, not in wealth or control, but in having preserved our family, our integrity, and our right to joy. By morning, the cabin was alive with energy and warmth. Patrick made breakfast for everyone. Mom joined in, and we talked about the future with clarity and purpose. We didn't need external validation, luxury experiences, or social media proof. What we had was real respect, love, and the hard-won knowledge that our family could survive, even thrive, after deception and betrayal. Each laugh, each shared meal, each playful moment in the snow became a symbol of that resilience. When it came time to watch the ball drop on TV, we gathered together, counting down as a family. I held my kids close, Patrick beside me, Mom smiling, genuinely present. As the new year began, the fireworks lit the sky, the cold air bit at our cheeks, but none of that mattered. We were together, safe, honest, strong, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of victory that wasn't about proving anything to anyone, but about protecting and cherishing the people who truly mattered to me. Peace, laughter, warmth, and a family finally aligned. It all came together on that snowy mountain in the cabin I had built for the people I loved. It tasted like winter, but mostly it tasted like triumph. And that's the story: chaos, betrayal, and eventually a little triumph and peace. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And sometimes that's all that matters. If you enjoyed hearing how it all unfolded, go ahead and hit like or even subscribe if you want more stories like this. And hey, I'd love to know, have you ever had a family moment that went completely sideways? Share it in the comments. I promise we all have those wild stories.